This is Left at the Door, a podcast and vlog where we get together and we talk about the things that we have left at the door in order to love or grow, succeed or survive. And today we have a guest on who is going to coach us a little bit. That's what you are, Robin. We're going to talk about that.
I am.
Yeah, we're gonna listen about that.
We're going to listen about it and we're going to talk about it. So our friend Robin is on. And Robin, give us a little bit of insight as to who you are.
Who am I? Well, my name is Robin Albright, and I've been a life coach, an executive coach since 2008. I used to do a lot of speaking gigs, and I haven't done that for a while. But I've written a book on caregiving, and that's because my husband got sick in 2012 with a brain disease, and now he has terminal cancer, which is a whole nother ball game. And so my coaching practice has kind of taken, it's had a lot of ebbs and flows, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know you do, because life does that, right?
Yeah. Right.
But at the same time, it's like it's kind of what has kept me afloat, if you will, because every time I coach, I love it. Yeah. So I'm sort of a visual coach, which means that I draw out what we coach about.
Okay.
And that makes me a little bit different because I'm also an artist. So with that said, it keeps me really busy. Besides that, I have a brand new puppy, and I'm a little bit spastic today because, oh my gosh.
I mean, enough said. A brand new puppy.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is
Right?
like chaos.
What kind of
I was
puppy?
there a year ago.
She's a Schweenie, Shih Tzu Wiener Dog mix.
She's long and fluffy.
She's adorable.
What'd you end up naming her?
Gidget.
Gidget. Oh, that's cute too.
That is super cute.
Love that.
So I left her at home and with my husband, and
That's probably wise.
Currently, she's left at the door so that you can do
we have
this.
left her at the door. But she's cute as can be, and I miss her already. She's sweet. So
That's a good feeling, though.
I know.
I want to bring up 2008 coaching. Like now today, I feel like that is such a common thing to hear someone say, you know what, I'm doing something for myself and I have a life coach.
Hired a coach.
Hired a
Yep.
coach. You know,
Right.
we hear that and it's more common now. But back in 2008, it wasn't. How did you get started down that path?
You know, that's a really good question. It's funny. I remember before I became a coach, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And it was almost as if, I think it was my son actually that mentioned it first. He's like, Mom, I have a friend who's a coach and I want you to meet him. So he was living in Florida at the time. We drove all the way down to Florida, and I set up this appointment with this guy who, I think his business was called The Sage or something like that, which is a great name, right?
Love
I
it.
know. So I met
comes
him
with a lot of responsibility, though. We're like,
right?
oh, you're a sage.
I know. I was excited to meet him. You know, it's like
yeah.
all the answers right here in one afternoon. So anyway, so I met him, and we sat and we talked at the coffee shop, and I fell in love with the idea, but he did everything over the phone, and I'm kind of a visual person, as we know, since I'm a visual coach, and I kind of talked myself out of it. I'm like, no, this is not for me, even though I loved it. So I went home and I'm like, yeah, Toby, that's my son. I was like, that was great, but nah, I don't think so. So long story short, I got a job doing something else. I was unfulfilled, and I kept remembering this coaching thing. And I had a friend who said, I have a friend who's a coach. You ought to meet her for lunch. And I go, okay. So I met her. And she told me where she went to school and how she did it. And I ended up falling in love with it all over again and decided I could do it visually. So that's why.
Well, it's almost like if two people
Right?
that you know and love are like, hey, you need to do this.
Yes.
That's the universe presenting you with something over
I
and over
think
until
so.
you figure it out.
I think so. And it's been such a good match. It's like every time I coach, I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. And because I'm visual and I'm artsy, it's a little bit different than most people, and a little bit like I stretch people, I think, a little bit further than, well, I think all coaches do. But, you know, we all think that we're the best, but you know what I'm saying.
You ought to. I mean, I wouldn't hire a coach that's like, I mean, I'm all right.
Right.
I'll leave you in your comfort zone, but it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. I get results every once in a while.
Okay, so can you tell us, because we do have friends that are coaches and
Yeah.
whatnot, can you talk to us about the visual side of it? What does that mean to you, or what does it feel like or look like for a client?
So for a client, it's a little bit different because I sit in front of them with paper and I draw out what we talk about. So in other words, they have a visual to take home with them. something that they can use. And if they need some sort of structure, I can draw out some like huge, gigantic, big piece of paper that they can put on their mirror and say out loud every morning. And you know, and because it's artsy, it's just, I think it's something that they didn't expect.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, you know, I think a lot of people can scratch out something on a piece of paper, but I tend to, you know, people who are...
You make it prettier.
I do. I want to make it pretty. Yeah, and I use color and, anyway. So that's kind of the difference, I guess, is they have structure to take home with them.
I always feel like I get more value out of something if I leave with something tangible.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Like, I'm going to throw away the doctor's instructions, but I'm like, this is proof I was here. Now I know I'm looking at what we talked about.
Exactly.
You get to connect, like, those different brain waves to make something stick.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's funny. When I became a coach, I was all about it, and it was super easy to find clients. I think it was the universe thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like I would talk about it, and people, I don't know, it's just, I don't think I ever advertised. It was just people would come to me. And it grew that way. Well, then when Dave got sick, it's like it all fell apart. And I thought for sure I was like doomed. You know, it's like, I'm never going to coach again, you know. And I was like, what's the future look like? I'm just, you know, blah, blah, blah. And
you were deep in it.
I was. But anyway, long story short, it's the very thing that has kept me alive and going. So when I tried to stop coaching for a while, thinking, you know, it was the right thing to do, it was the wrong thing to do because I started to lose myself.
Well, that's probably like did it feel like it was your outlet in a way?
It does. Yeah, it still today does. I mean, it feels very much like when I'm coaching, I am coming from my core. And other, you know, it's hard to do that sometimes because life gets in the way. But honestly, when I am coaching, that's it.
Do you find yourself trying to apply that to your close family?
Oh, yes.
And then they pull the like, don't you coach me? Do you get that?
Yeah. I believe my mom was a coach. She was amazing. Yeah. So. Yeah, I do that. And poor Dave, my husband, he's like, you know, his whole life.
Does he fall for it? Is he easily manipulated?
He actually is.
You're like, Dave, let me draw this out for you. Hold on a second.
Exactly.
What I want for Christmas.
You a picture.
Actually.
Look at this picture I made you.
When we first got married, it was like, you know how married people when they're first, you know, newlyweds will fight. And I remember way back then I was not a coach yet. And I remember saying, listen, let's sit down and let's draw out what love looks like to you. And I'll draw out what it looks like to me. And
something you would do.
Yeah.
I know. Can you imagine what Dustin's face?
Oh, yeah, but he would do it, though. And he would participate. It sounded like Dave would do it. He'd do it.
Yeah, and it helped, actually, because we could see what was in each other's heads, you know, and hearts. So, I don't know. It works. It's amazing to me, drawing things out like that.
Okay, so I know, like, HIPAA, you don't talk about clients, like, specifically. But
yes, you do.
But but we are going to anyway. Okay.
We're immune.
Right.
Talk to us about what is a typical client? Like, what would you say, or what are some things that you've helped people overcome or move through or move past?
That's a really good question. There's one that comes to mind immediately, and we'll call him Fred.
Yes.
Fred, at one time, came to me and he's like, well, you know, I just really, I'm unhappy in my job. I just want a new job. I'm like, okay. So explain to me why. What are you missing? And he's telling me all about himself. And pretty soon, I remember saying to him, listen, I have homework for you. I think I want you to go back to work and determine what it is you're missing, but I want you to look for it. So he started looking for what he was missing, is basically what it is. And after so long, we coached for probably, 3 months. He came back and he said, he goes, my job is not as bad as I thought. I'm like, why? And he goes, you know why? I go, no, really, why? He goes, because I started looking for things that I wanted rather than the things I didn't like. I go, that's beautiful, right?
So tricky.
I know, it was very tricky. And so anyway, he ended up saying after we coached for probably 6 months to a year, and he was like, I think I'm good. I'm going to keep my job. I like it, right? I was like, okay. So he kept his job. He was happy with the people he was around, happy doing what he was doing all of a sudden. And about 3 months later, he calls me and he's like, Robin. I go, yeah. He goes, I got a job offer. I go, you did? Well, I know for a fact you tried over and over to get a job and it didn't work. I go, so what happened? He goes, I don't know. I want to hear it from you.
Yes.
He goes, well, I started looking for all the things I liked and the things that I wanted. I started looking for the things that I wasn't missing. I started looking for the fulfillment pieces, and all of a sudden I became a happier person, and people wanted to be around me. I ended up making friends at work. I loved my job all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden the outside world wanted more of me. I go, that is beautiful. And so then we started working together again, building, where he was at, maybe moving up the ladder, things like that. So, so that's really good.
That is such a great story.
It really is.
I mean, it's almost like, the book, The Secret, and
the Law of Attraction.
The Law of Attraction.
It really was like that.
Yeah, because it really, I'm not going to say that all situations are like that.
Right, but what you think about, you bring about.
Yes,
that's right.
And that's what surrounds, your environment. And I know that we're, believers of that anyway.
Right.
But it really does help put something in perspective for somebody else when it's okay, just kind of hold up a mirror and be like, all right, this is what you're putting out into the universe.
Exactly.
Is that really the life that you want?
Exactly. And that's the way this was. It was really, it was good. And it's funny because people will ask me, what is coaching all about? Kind of, they'll want me to sell it to them.
Yeah.
Kind of. And it's like, I'm almost like,
No, you sell yourself to me. I'll decide if we're going to work together.
Well, and it's funny because it's almost like I've watched it happen so many times. The words don't even express.
No,
the
there's
way
all
it
these
works.
nuances.
It's amazing to me.
You can't put it in a pamphlet.
Yeah.
You can't. It's
that does make sense.
It's beautiful.
And the Law of Attraction is how we even got to meet you.
That's right.
Cassie and I put on a spiritual retreat last fall. Whenever this is airing, I don't know.
Yeah.
And Robin found us on the internet. And as soon as I met you at the registration table, I was like, Cassie, Robin, there's Robin. She's our people.
Yes.
She's our people.
Yeah.
And when we were going through who we wanted to be our next people on the podcast, we were like, who from the retreat? Who?
And this is before we knew that you did speaking engagements, trainings, the coaching stuff.
Yeah.
We were just we just loved your energy.
Let's have a conversation.
Who you were as a human. Yeah. We're like, this is the type of human being that we just like to be around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I felt the same way with you guys, honestly. It's like I really needed that retreat.
Yeah.
With the things that have happened with my husband and such. And so it's like, it felt really good to go to something that I felt like I could reconnect. And that's kind of the way that was. So thank you.
You're welcome.
It was wonderful.
There was a couple coaches in there that came to the retreat and basically had similar stories. I think sometimes you always say this, Jessie, that you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Right.
And it's like we're coaching, you're caregiving, you have your husband, we have our families, we have all these things that are constantly draining and the energy.
We love them, but they are drains.
Yes.
They're
drains. So just every now and then it has to happen where you refuel and you recharge. And I think, Jess and I travel everywhere to do those types of things, and we don't purposefully have to leave the state. We don't say we have to get away to Idaho in order to feel
I've died
refilled.
to go to Idaho.
Yeah, exactly.
Or West Virginia.
That was the last two that we went to. It wasn't that at all. It was we just knew that's what we needed.
Yep.
And we needed a retreat like that.
Sure.
And ultimately, we're like, why can't it be closer to home? And how many people would benefit from it that are literally in our own backyard?
And we met so many people that we didn't know existed. And I feel this way passionately. It's like if you build it, they will come. Or if you are seeking out that community. And we hear people all the time be like, there's nothing to do in Decatur. Decatur's blah, blah, blah. No, it's there. It's there if you are looking for it. But people, they want their truth to be that they can't help themselves. So there's not resources.
Yeah.
And we are all people that are like, no, this isn't how it's going to be. We're going to be in control of this. We're going to make it better.
Right.
So how have you taken that attitude to deal with what you're going through with your husband and what you've gone through with your husband?
Oh, goodness. First of all, I want to say that Decatur is the town I was born in. This is my hometown. Yes. I really love Decatur. And it's funny, Peoria, where I live now, sort of has the same kind of image, if you will. People will talk about it in a negative way, but I really love where I live. I don't know. I agree. What you said, yes.
And that's the podcast.
There you go. What more can we say? Right. But as far as using that sort of a thought with my husband, it's funny. At first when David got sick, I was like, ugh, I just was devastated. And I honestly felt like life was over. I couldn't figure out, I've never lived on my own. And you know,
Same.
If cancer takes Dave, you know, things like that scare me in a way. And so all I can say is when I would get in my head, I would go to all those dark places. And then I would remember that it's not just my head leading my life. And rather than get stuck there, I would try to pull myself to my heart. And with that, I think, I remember one season, I called it Big Love, and I put it, I was a big Facebook person at the time, and I remember putting out there, we're going to deal with big love this year, and it was like all this love stuff, and I knew that was the answer. I knew that I needed to get out of my head and into my heart and to just love, and that things would be okay, and it's kind of the way it worked for me. As a matter of fact, quick little story about hope, and I think I told it at the retreat. But there was a night that I was feeling so devastated and so broken. And I remember all day long, I used the word hopeless. And I told my niece, she called and I said, I feel so hopeless. I have no hope for the future. And I remember at the end of the day going, wow, you're a coach and you're saying hopeless over and over. What is wrong with you? So my friend has a really cool shop in Peoria, and she called me that night, and said, is there any way you can work for me tomorrow because I have no one working? And I go, sure, I'll do that. Why not? I'm hopeless. I might as well sit behind a counter. You know what I mean?
Yes.
What more is there to do? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Might as well.
Right? So I was like, okay.
That's how everyone in retail feels right now.
So I went to work at her store. I was the only one there. It was a small shop. And I remember standing behind the counter, feeling hopeless. And pretty soon a little girl walks in the door, and she's followed by her mother, and she's cute as can be. She's got on tennis shoes and a sparkly tutu and like curly kinky hair. And she walks in and she's full of this amazing energy. And I was drawn to her immediately. She started walking through the store, and immediately you would go, usually, don't touch that. But I was so enthralled with her being as a person. I was like, I don't care.
I wonder what she'll touch.
Exactly. That's the way it was.
What is she going to do? What's she drawn to?
Exactly. And her mom would stand behind her and she would go, Mom, look how cool this is. And her mom would go, honey, put it down. It's not yours. And I would just kind of go, yeah, she's so cute. And she kept bouncing around the store, and pretty soon she stood in front of me on the other side of the counter. And she looks at me with these big eyes and she goes, hey. I go, hi. I go, you're so cute. She goes, thank you. I go, so how are you today? She goes, good. She goes, what's your name? And I go, my name's Robin. And she goes, that's a great name. I go, thank you. And I go, what's your name? And she looks up at me and she says, my name is Hope. And I go, your name's Hope? She goes, yeah. I go, Hope, I've been waiting for you to walk in the door all day. And she goes, really? And she cocks her head, and kind of looks at me funny. And I go, yes. I go, I was feeling hopeless. And obviously now I have hope. And she goes, that's so cool. And we start talking a little bit, and they leave. And pretty soon these two ladies walk in the door, and they're both like complaining, probably about politics or something, right?
Yeah.
They're complaining, and they walk around the store, and pretty soon they come to the counter, and I'm like, I feel so drawn to them to tell them the story.
Yes.
So I told them about my husband being sick, how I felt hopeless, and about the little girl that walked in.
Yes.
And the one lady stood there and she had a tear dropping down her eye. And I'm like, oh, this was meant to be, right?
Yeah.
So they were smiling and laughing as they left, and I felt like, oh good, this little girl named Hope has touched more than just my life today.
Right.
And pretty soon they come back, they're at the door about an hour later, and I go, did you forget something? And they go, no. The one lady goes, we could not get you this. And they hand me a gift. And I open it up, and it's a bracelet with the word hope on it. Aww. And I'm like, today is so full of hope.
Yes.
It just turned it totally around for me.
Yes.
And that, I think, that day, I really realized that that's all it takes sometimes, is just being able to allow yourself to flip a thought.
Yes.
Right? from hopeless to hope, and it took that little girl, but I was just so thankful. Isn't that a great story?
It really is.
So
I think
good.
sometimes, though, you have to acknowledge it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you said, like, oh, man, here I am a coach, and I'm, like, hopeless. But sometimes it's even just accepting and acknowledging, like, this is where I currently am at right now. And then being open to saying, okay, this is how I feel, but this is how I want to continue to feel.
Yeah.
You know, and being open to, because if you would have stayed closed off, that little girl would have come in and out of that store and no one would have been the wiser.
Yep, true.
You know? But
That's
you were open to it, because I do think that's a major piece to everybody's, like, I don't know, whenever there's a transition or an aha moment in their life of just, there's a lot of viewers and listeners that I think sweep things under the rug.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we all have been at stages in our life where we do that. We're like, I'm just going to pretend. I'm just going to keep faking it till I make it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get to that point. So sometimes I think even acknowledging whatever that feeling is, whether it's hopelessness, whether it's like I'm unhappy, I'm unfulfilled, whatever.
I'm carrying anger.
Yes, there's resentment, there's whatever that is.
I think this story too specifically is showcasing the impact that your energy can have on someone else.
Oh, yeah.
So looking at this from the point of view of this little girl who's just walking around like, life is cool, pins are neat, I love everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if we could all just be a little bit more like that and appreciate that stuff, I mean, look at the ripple effect that has had.
So true. I've told that story so many times. I think I wrote an article for the Peoria magazine about it, actually. I was like, people need to hear that, you know, because it's so easy to feel trapped in your head with dark thoughts.
Yeah.
It really is. You know, something else I want to mention too is that the night before, when I realized I was hopeless, I really did own that. And I really did feel hopeless. I think because I'm a coach, I realized there's value in that. And so that night I felt every bit hopeless. And I think sometimes you have to feel those dark thoughts in order to move on, and out of them, you have to go through them.
That's
and so,
yes, you have to move through it.
Yes.
Yes.
So that helped too. You know?
On my sister Maggie's episode, she talks about an anger diet, where when you realize like the problem is that I'm angry, I'm just gonna have anger. That's what I'm gonna eat, that's what I'm gonna breathe. I'm just gonna be angry.
That's right.
To go get through all of those feelings, because the only way out is through.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's funny because I have a client too, we'll call him Sam, who was very much frustrated because his wife would get upset at him. He would go in the bedroom and have dark moments. And so I said to him, so what can we call that? And we decided to call it a 5-minute funeral. So he would go in there for 5 minutes, have those funeral type thoughts, and then leave in 5 minutes, and he's all the better for it. And his wife allowed it and didn't get upset, right?
Yes.
And so it was just so beneficial, because I think that you have to be able to feel them in order to move out of them.
Dustin and I saw a speaker at a convention that I was at for work one time. His name's Hal Elrod, and he says, you get to be mad for 5 minutes. Something goes wrong, you get 5 minutes, and you devote those 5 minutes to, I'm mad, this sucks, this is unfair, it's bullshit.
Right.
And then you have to be done.
Yeah.
But you get 5 minutes. And so many times Dustin has said, there's nothing you can do about it. Go have your 5 minutes.
Yes.
And it completely changes how we handle a lot of our conflict.
Yeah.
It's having that mentality.
It makes sense. It does.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm the owner of Bad Love Creative Co. I'm a photographer that services both Central Illinois and Chicago areas. This year has been incredibly difficult for me. I've had lots of cancellations due to shutdown. Prairie Commons Business Collective has helped me bring awareness to my clients. The marketing has let people know that I'm still here and I'm taking clients. I'm taking social distancing measures, and that is how my photo shoots go. Prairie Commons Business Collective has really helped get more clients and to reach new people. One of the things I love most about Prairie Commons Business Collective is that there's a place for everybody, which is something I value most. It's a community of people of all business types. So whether you're a crafter or a photographer like me, or even a furniture maker, there's a place for you.
May your day be filled with giggles. The place to come for cards and gifts. Personalized just for you. Come and try our tasty treats. They will leave you giggling too. Oh, the brightest spot on their
to us about your podcast. So you basically took this experience and then you did something else with it.
Because you're not a podcast virgin.
Right, I'm not. It's funny. Okay, I have a friend named Beth. She's a psychologist, and she lives in Arizona. And she always was saying, "Oh gosh, we would make a great show together." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, Beth." So one day she calls me up and she's like, "Guess what I did?" I go, "What?" She goes, "I signed us up for a podcast." I go, "You did?" She goes, "Yeah, we start next week." I go, "Oh my gosh!" So she's in Arizona.
This does sound like us.
And I'm in Illinois. And so like 2 days later, I get this like microphone and this arm delivered to the house.
She's like, "You're doing this, and here's your
I
equipment."
have it
There
over
it
the
is.
table and like, okay, I guess we are. So we decided to call it the counselor and the coach because she's a counselor and I'm a coach, and a lot of people don't understand the differences. So,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was way fun, first of all, from that angle, just to kind of talk about the differences and how, it was fun. And then we started inviting people to join our podcast and interview people like you guys are doing me. And we had some of the best people on. Like I was telling you guys earlier, we had a psychologist who, his name is Raymond Moody, and he's written several books about life after death experiences. And he was so fun. He was so cool. It was like such a cool topic. And
That'd be a fascinating conversation to listen to.
Just even the
really
little
was.
blurb that you gave, I was like so intrigued. I don't know, stuff like that has always intrigued me anyway.
Well, and it's just experiences that you haven't had yet.
It's like the curiosity of it all.
Yeah.
Well, what was that book? There was a
Do Dead People Watch Me Shower?
no.
well, that sounds like a good book.
It
Sounds
is.
really good. No, it's about the little boy. It was like a little
Oh,
boy.
5
Heaven's not
minutes in
for
heaven.
real, or
Heaven is for real.
Heaven is for real. Not
They
heaven
were-
is for real.
Yeah, because there's a movie, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
remember like reading that book, and then it made me this where we talk about the curiosity thing and like always just wanting to research. This is like my nerd brain, but when that little boy stumbled across the image like an artist had painted of Jesus, he was like, that is what he looks like, or it was like that I saw that man.
Yes.
I think is maybe
I know
what it
him.
was. I know
Yeah.
him. But then they
Yes.
started showing all these other versions and all these other paintings and portraits and things like that of Jesus, and it was like, I don't know who that is, but that is him. That's who I met. And
that's amazing.
that was painted by a little girl who was in like Russia or something like that decades before him.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So anyway, but I'm like, all those things, I'm like, I love like connecting those dots of like the people that you meet with these type of experiences. It just leads to one thing after another. And I'm like, even if it's something that you're like, okay, well, it's not like I'm going to go write a book about life after,
Yes.
death or whatever. But
Or maybe you do.
maybe
You're
you do,
this
but-
Dr. Moody.
yeah.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
like those types of things. I'm like, you can't unknow that. I'm like,
That's
at some
true.
point, it's just who knows why you needed to learn it. But man, it's amazing to learn about those types
It
of
was
things
an
and people.
incredible topic. It really was. And the one thing I asked him, I said, so if you could give us all one thought, take away. And he said that he thought, he goes, I wasn't ever a very religious person. He goes, but now he goes, I know that there's something there. And he said, I think that we're all going to be delightfully surprised. It's not going to be exactly like everybody thinks. He goes, but I think it's going to be a surprise. And I was like, cool, tell me more. But he wouldn't tell me anymore.
And it's going to be good.
Right. It was definitely good. He said that the 3 things people walked away with that were so in common, one was that love is the answer when they came back to love. The second was service to others was the second. The third one was they all saw a picture, like a motion picture of their life. And I was like, wow, do they feel judgment? He goes, no. He goes, they felt each of the experiences they saw coming from the feelings of the person they were with. So isn't that wild? Right. So I think about that all the time. Like when I'm with somebody, like how am I making them feel? Because that's what those people felt.
Well, there's that saying, like, people won't remember what you do, but they remember how you made them feel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was really cool. So each of the podcast episodes were so great. They were just full of so much. I learned so much from them. I loved it. Do you guys feel that way?
Oh, 100%. We
Yes.
finish it. I feel like we finish almost every interview and we're like, that was so good. This is good shit.
Yeah. It really
That's the way we were.
Well, and I think it's like, remember the VH1 behind the story or behind the music, and it
Yes.
was like the story behind it, and like I was a nerd and watched that and loved it. Like I was
even if it was an artist I didn't like.
Yes.
I will watch documentaries about stuff I do not care about because I'm like, this is so fascinating.
And I thought that it was
And I
because I was in broadcasting. I was like, oh, this is probably what it is. I'm like,
Because
no.
you're a voyeur. It's because you're nosy as shit.
That's what it is. It is. I'm like, no, I think it's just storytelling is words and the storytelling and all of that stuff. But I really think, so I started running into all these stories, behind the scenes stories of clients, you know, with marketing clients. And I'm like, the one I always bring up and I talk about a lot is like, you know, Chrissy from Giggles, who's down on Merchant Street here in Decatur. And I'm like, she's more than Chrissy from Giggles, you know?
Yeah.
And so many of these people, you're more than just a mom, you're more than just a significant other or a wife or something like that. And I'm like, these stories, the people have these stories as to the why and to how their life got to this point. And how cool would it be? And I felt like it just tied in with, I don't know, everything from the shop local push to the just, it's a shitty time. 2020 was so shitty. And it's like, hey,
we need to be connected with people.
Right.
Yeah, but you can't if you don't know them.
Yes, exactly. It's like the Brene Brown, you can't hate up close. Yeah. You know, like she talks about that. She's like, you can't grab a person's hand and hold them and look, you know, hold their hand and look them in the eye. Yeah. Now, maybe some can. Maybe
sociopaths and psychopaths.
So, yes. There you go. But most of the time, you cannot say that horrible thing that you typed out on the internet. You would never say it to that person's face. Or you would never say it to a little kid's face. And I'm like, man. So it was those types of things. I'm like, I mean, we did. It was kind of like that what you said about meth. Like, we're like, we're doing this. Let's do it. Even if we're the only ones that listen and watch.
We are delighted by ourselves more than anyone ever could be. With us. So, if nothing else, we are getting a lot of enjoyment out of this.
That's what matters right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if you and think about that, but we're always like, when we're like old in nursing homes, we'll be like,
laughing our asses off.
Yes.
Turn on that podcast. Well, podcast is the thing that used to happen back when we were young.
That's right.
Exactly.
No, Beth and I are the same way. As a matter of fact, we'd get on there sometimes and we would do it through Zoom. We would, you know, and anyway, so I could see her and she could see me. And she would come like with some strange like hat on and like I don't know, she would have a toy in her hand and it was like, oh,
what kind of toy?
No, not like that. You know what I mean? But she was so fun. So we would try to like crack each other up, you know, like during it, and it was just fun.
So do you guys still record?
We don't. We haven't for a while. I like I said, I sort of stopped everything for a while when I found out my husband had cancer too, and I was like, I'm slowly picking things back up because I really don't want to lose myself. And but the podcast is kind of still sitting out there. Every now and then she'll go, Robin, we really ought to still do it. I go, I know, and you know, commitment.
We should have a crossover.
Ooh, that would be awesome too.
Yeah, is that like life after death stuff?
No, like crossover. We're all gonna kill ourselves.
I was like what?
And we're gonna document it, Spencer, so that you can tell everyone.
We need a camera on Spencer.
Seriously,
so that the reactions. He's like,
next time we invite a guest, they have to bring their own cameras. Tell us about your book, Robin.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, the book. So when Dave got sick with his brain, he's got something called behavioral variant frontal temporal degeneration, which is really an early onset dementia. And it showed up in him with his personality. So immediately I thought he stopped loving me, and I was
What age are we talking?
59. He was 59 when he was diagnosed. Yeah. And so... And I was 12, of course. You know,
naturally.
Right. So anyway, sorry. Right. Thanks. It's okay. But anyway, it was like devastating. It really was, because his personality is what was affected, and so it was like living with somebody different. It was so weird. So at the time, I remember I was just like, again, hopeless and feeling all these feelings. And my son Toby said, "Mom, you ought to make something beautiful out of this." And I thought, you know, I ought to write a book. So I sat down. The book I wrote is not like a typical book. It's kind of like a workbook, and I wrote it all by hand and did drawings because I wanted it to be something that was interactive and felt artsy and like a workbook. Yes, right? And to be honest with you, writing it was more therapeutic probably for me than anyone. It was like so good for me. At the time, David and I, when he got sick, we claimed bankruptcy. Life fell apart in every way possible. I had no money to publish it, so I did a Kickstarter, and that scared me. But won the Kickstarter and published the book. Drove to Tennessee to pick up all these books in the back of a truck. It was like amazing to me. I was like, it was like surreal.
I made this.
It was amazing. But the book is just full of like 12 tiny well-being tips for caregivers.
What's it called?
That's what it's called.
Oh.
Yes.
12 tiny well-being tips for caregivers. And
I love it.
Yeah, and it's just basically written from a life coaching perspective, you know, to remember who you are. There's one page in particular, we talked earlier about emotions and about how, you know, if you're angry, you're angry. There's one page, it's my favorite page, I think, in the whole book, and it shows little, the emotion, emoticons or whatever.
Yeah, the emojis.
Thank you.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
all of those with different faces of different emotions. And I remember thinking how guilty I felt when all of my emotions showed up, because we're taught, you know, you don't want to get angry.
Get
you
it
don't
together.
Right.
Yes.
But to be honest with you, every emotion showed up, and I realized how that's healthy because I felt alive, and I knew that I was alive, much like or unlike my husband, who doesn't always show emotion. So it was a gift to have emotions, and that page was really important to me, just to say it's okay when life falls apart for your emotions to show up. So
Was he an emotional guy before?
oh my gosh, he was like kind of a daredevil. Like, I never knew what he was going to do. He was spontaneous, and like, I think that's what drew me to him. Is he
Sounds
was
like fun.
Yes.
he was way fun. And he still is, but he's different now than he was. But he was very much, full of shit.
What's the story? Like, how did you guys meet?
Oh, okay. Years and years ago, we met. Years and years ago was
When you were 12.
When we were
Right.
I was 12. We actually met at a funeral home at a Bible study.
I love picking people up at funeral homes.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what happened, kind of. Yeah.
I don't do
Our
online.
love story doesn't start
I
that
don't
way.
need online dating. This is why. This is where I'm going wrong.
Someone needs to die
Yeah.
so Cassie can be the love of her life.
It was so weird. It was like I met him there. I
Were
really
you
did.
at a funeral, or were you just like scoping dudes?
It was a Bible study.
At a funeral home?
Yes.
This just sounds like
That
all
seems a
kinds
little
of cheerful
weird.
stuff.
Okay, so
Okay.
then we met, right? And he decided that he thought I was cute. I think he
Okay.
thought my butt was cute because I had a small butt back then. But anyway,
Small does not mean better.
That's true. That's true. Well, he knows that now, but you know, back then,
Right.
So anyway, so we he decided he wanted to ask me out, and he kind of stalked me a little bit where I worked. I worked at Sears.
How did you do that back then?
What?
Stalking.
Oh.
Yeah, now people
Now,
do it on Facebook and texting.
Yeah,
and-
back then he
so
did it in
what-
person.
Oh.
He would like walk around and look at me.
You would buy the same polo shirt from Sears every day.
Correct. That kind of stuff.
I need another
creepy.
refrigerator.
Sears here in Decatur. Are we
Yes,
talking here in Decatur? Okay.
yes,
So
yeah.
is he from Decatur too?
He lived in Decatur at the time, but he's from Ohio.
Okay.
So, yeah.
He moved to Decatur
He
to
moved.
go to Sears.
He stalked her to go to Sears. Yes.
He did.
Yeah.
So anyway, then he actually met my sisters before he met. I can't remember how all this really happened, but anyway, he ended up at my house on my birthday, and we met actually really talking. Like, we kind of saw each other, knew each other, but you know. And so we started dating, and then one morning, this is the kicker, one morning he wakes up. And I remember waking up at 6 thinking, wow, I had a deal on my mind. What's the deal? Because I was a teenager. I was 19, and I slept until like noon every day.
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, there's something weird happening. What's going on? I better call him when So I called
And
him
he
later.
was standing next to you.
He was looking in your window.
That would have been a good
Dave
move
is on
on his
my
part.
mind.
But I call him up and I'm like, Dave, I had you on my mind this morning. What's going on? And he starts laughing, this like kind of cocky laugh, like I'm like, what?
I cast a spell.
He goes, I had a dream. I go, you had a dream? He goes, I dreamt that you were my wife lying next to me in bed.
What?
I was like, okay, I think we should date around. That's what I said. Really? Because I wasn't quite ready for that.
This is intense.
Yeah, right.
We just had salad once.
So we stopped dating. Honestly, I was like, that scared me. Yes. It scared me. So then I know, isn't that wild? So then we didn't date, but we kept running into each other, like honestly at grocery stores or at restaurants, but then
Sears.
Right, at Sears, on purpose on his part.
Yes.
So then I went to some kind of retreat in Oklahoma, and I met this guy named Donald. He looked like a Greek god. He really
Strike
did.
3.
Right? So Dave, I came back, and I was dating Donald now, and Dave goes, I had a dream about you. I go, you did?
So you're creeping me out,
Right? He goes, I dreamt that you were on the crest of a hill, and this guy came up and pulled you close to him and kissed you. No joke. It was on the crest of a hill, and there were flowers around, just like he described.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Because he was there. He was stalking you. This
I'm
wasn't
telling
a
you.
dream. He saw it happen.
I was just like, whatever, Dave. And I just ignored him and kept dating Donald. Well, then I remember later that summer, because March was my birthday. Spring, we stopped dating. Met Donald in the summer. Then fall, about August, my niece decided to get married. And we go to Kansas City, Donald and I do. And all I hear is the word Dave everywhere. I hear Dave. I cannot tell you how many times I saw cars that looked like his, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I was with the wrong guy.
Yes.
So on the way home, I was like, sorry, Donald.
Thanks for being my arm candy. But you gotta go.
I can't wait for my mom to hear this story because whenever her and my dad broke up for the summer, like it was like I think the summer after my mom had graduated high school, it was when The Great Gatsby had come out. Well, my mom's initials are Jody Grant, so J.G. and J. Gatsby. So my dad apparently, when they broke up, took some other girl on a date, and they went and saw The Great Gatsby. And he's like, I'm sitting there in that movie, and everything is J.G., J.G. And he was like, I knew, like, I got to get back with Jody, like this, you know?
Same sort of thing.
Yes, but I believe that the universe does stuff like that. Like,
No doubt.
I've had experiences like that as well, where I'm like, you have to pay attention to them. So did you, all this Dave stuff, clearly you did, but did you give him a shot then, or did you make him hold out?
I came back and I said, Dave,
Here's the thing.
yeah, I'm with the wrong guy, and I clearly know that. I'm sorry, I didn't know it before, but I do now. And he's like, hallelujah. And then we decided to get married, and we planned our marriage. And, anyway, that was the beginning, yeah.
And you have-
1979 is when that happened, yeah.
And you have Toby.
So cool.
And Amber. So we have 2
Amber.
children and 4 grandchildren.
Oh,
That's
do they
awesome.
live close? Like, what's their ages and where are they?
do.
Yeah.
Well, our son lives in Chicago, and he's an artist up there. He's pretty cool. And our daughter's also equally cool. And they live like 20, 30 minutes away from us, in a little town between Eureka and El Paso. So, yeah. And then the 4 grandkids are just as cute as can be. The granddaughter is now 18. And then they just kind of step down. Yeah.
Yes.
18. She's like
Wow.
an adult.
Right.
A whole person.
She's a whole human.
person. I know.
Whole ass person.
It's amazing. It really is. So
We talked about emotions earlier, and I want to ask you about this gentleman here.
oh yeah.
For those of you that can't see because you're listening, Cassie, describe what I'm holding.
Well, at first, it looks almost like a little monster. Like, it is. It's a little gray monster. He's got some grizzly, grumpy teeth, and he's got some wide eyes. Like, he's a little afraid, but he could be grumpy, but he's definitely feeling some emotions. And then he's got some amazing purple hair.
Yes.
Funky, curly purple hair.
Curly
If my
purple
hair was purple, that's what my hair would look like.
And you wore it in a top pony.
If I wore it in
like
a top pony.
A Jazzercise video.
Yes.
That would look good.
That would be this dude.
So who is this gentleman?
His name is Mr. Pissy. And he's all about a pissy attitude. So the way he came about is after I became a coach, my sister Aggie lives in Florida, and she calls me one day and she's like, oh, I'm just feeling I had the pissiest attitude. I'm like, you do? And I'm like, I'm a brand new coach. And I knew the value in playing with things like that. And I said, I stopped for a minute and I go, it sounds like Mr. Pissy might be visiting your house. And she stopped for a minute because she's an artist too. And she stops for a minute and she goes, he is. I see him. I go, so what does he look like? She goes, he's ugly. I go, where's he at? He's on the sofa. He's sitting over there and he's smoking a big cigar. I go, he is? I go, is he saying something? No, he's just laughing at me. I go, well, anyway, we started making fun of him on the sofa. By the time the conversation was done, her pissy attitude was gone, and we were just like cracking up laughing.
Yes.
So that year for Christmas, I'm like, oh, I think I'm gonna make my sisters a Mr. Pissy doll. so I created this little monster ×2 and sent one to my 2 sisters, and I put a letter of authenticity with it.
That's official.
Right.
Yes.
And I said, this is the epitome of every foul thought in your head. And if you want to take control, then just grab him and put him in a drawer, run over him with your car,
Oh, so
whatever.
it's like a voodoo doll.
Kind of, yeah. And so
it's like a stress doll too, because he's squishy. I noticed that too.
Yes,
so it's like you could just, and you're sitting there and you could, just wad him up. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, he's a mess.
So what do they think of it when they got the presents?
Oh, they were like cracking up, laughing, and then I started giving them to my clients, and we talk about Mr. Pissy taming and ways in order to like handle your negative self-talk, and he's really been amazingly valuable in my practice. And it's funny, my son Toby at one time's like, Mom, he goes, you ought to make a life-size Mr. Pissy outfit,
man.
put it on Dad, and then I'll do a video, and you can like tackle him. And I'm like, well,
And Dave's like, anything for you.
Yes.
He's a really smart guy.
right? And we had a website for a while. It was called MrPissys.com or something, and it would have Dave. I think he was the voice, and it would say, your hair looks like crap today, and just like all kinds of negative self-talk stuff. Right.
All the things you say to yourself.
Yes, it was it was funny. And then we had, I think it was my granddaughter with a magic wand.
Fixing it.
Yeah, it was fun. We've played around with him in a lot of different ways, but he is what he is, Mr. Pissy.
So clients, they'll respond to that. I feel like in a way it's like, it's one thing to just sit and tell your therapist or your counselor or your coach, like, this is how I feel, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, well, let me just jot that down.
Right.
But it's another to, like, give it some life and then see it through.
And make it a thing you can go deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been remarkable, really. I think the ability to laugh at our negative self-talk is huge. And I think that you can't really look at him and play around with him much without laughing. And so I think that's really been part of what's really made him so valuable.
Yeah, you have to make it be something ridiculous.
Exactly.
Like this guy.
Correct. He is ridiculous. So it's like, yeah, he's been good. It's been fun. And I continue to come up with like ideas of things to do with clients that are kind of outside the box, kind of like him, because I think that's what we miss sometimes. We try to do the same thing over and over and over and over, and we don't get anywhere. So sometimes like a creative thought that's a little bit different, or some gadget you can hold or something you can do that, it really does make a difference in people's lives. So,
Well, and the standard practice isn't going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
So having someone who's thinking a little outside the box is going to allow you to deal with your problems in a different way that might be more effective and allow you to work through them.
so true.
We're not all wired the same.
We're not. It's funny, I remember I had a client, an engineering firm, hire me before Dave got sick, and I would go and coach their executives. And I remember on the way there going, oh my gosh, who am I? I'm an artist. I wear overalls and bibs, and they're wearing suits, and I'm going, and I was scared to death. But I remember I got there, and I was like, the first guy I coached, he cried, and I was like, you know what that is? That's valuable.
I'd love to get
yeah.
some tears.
Yes, yeah. I was like, and all of a sudden I realized they're all human beings. It's all human, and I think people often need the ability to step outside of their normal thought, and I think I do that for especially executives. It's like giving them something different to think about. So,
Well, and executives, usually you don't pencil that time into your schedule.
No.
You don't allow that. And I think that's a big, huge part of it of like, if you break and they see you break character and are not firm and things like, what will happen? Will efficiency go down? Will all these things, it's like a domino effect. So I think sometimes executives are the ones that are like the most like, let me just put on my mask, get to work, get through the day, and I'll deal with it later.
And they got there by not being vulnerable.
Yeah.
By being the strongest or the most fierce or whatever.
that's true.
So then we start to see vulnerability as weakness, which we know is not the case.
So true.
We talk a lot about family dynamics and expectations and things like that. And while we were off camera earlier, you shared with me this new epidemic that's happening where
Right.
families are estranged from each other, and talk a little bit more about like what's causing that to happen right now.
Well, I read an article. It was a BBC article, and it was talking about how it's a bit of an epidemic over there, and I think it is in the United States as well. It was saying, and I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like 1 in 7 families was experiencing some sort of estrangement, and most often it was adult children and their parents, and then it would affect grandchildren and all that sort of thing. And they were saying that a lot of it was due to divorce. You know, when divorce happens, a lot of times families break apart. But they were saying something new's been showing up, and that was in the area of happiness and fulfillment, that they believe that people individually are seeking happiness more so than the commitment towards family as structure. And so all of a sudden, the family structure is starting to disappear to some degree. And I know my husband and I have experienced some of that. When he got sick, it was traumatic. We went through things. I showed up with like every emotion possible. I wasn't the strong mom that I appeared to be before. I needed my kids. And I said things I shouldn't have said, I'm sure. When you show up with every emotion you do, right?
Hurt people.
Hurt people.
Yes.
And so,
But it's also new territory. You know, it's not like
no one's an expert on that.
No one is an expert
who's not
on
been through it.
horrific diagnosis to your life partner.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like
It
that's heavy.
It was heavy.
It's interesting to me too when you say that people get focused more on their individual happiness becomes more important. And there are two sides to that. First, I think it's important that you do things that make yourself happy.
I do too.
And you stay out of relationships that are toxic, that are not good for your mental health, whatever. Then the flip side of that is when you go to such an extreme that it's detrimental to society, that you're making decisions that are not okay and good for the greater good. And I think it's such a fine line because we talk a lot on the show about generational trauma and the generational curse of like carrying the burden of, well, it's what my mom did, or I was taught from a young age, blood is thicker than water.
Yeah.
And my brother and I were just talking about this last night, that I am one to say blood is not thicker than water. You do not get a free pass to be a dick because we're related.
Right.
And his thing is, but Jesse, it is thicker than water, and that's why it hurts.
Yeah.
Because when that person is the one, like he's looking at it being the receiver, like, yeah, it bothers me more than it would if it were just some Joe Schmo on the street, because blood is thicker than water.
Right.
And with the pandemic and people making different choices, and with fucking social media, like you may not have known what a racist your Aunt Kathy was, but now that everyone has a keyboard,
there you go.
Now you know all of these intimate things that makes it so much easier to separate yourself and go, holy shit, I'm not doing that anymore. I am no longer associating with this branch of my family or whatever. And so when you said that, I was like, oh my God, that totally makes sense. Because now you can't unknow things. Now I know that.
Yeah.
Right.
The one thing I take away from it is that, you know, I know that the study feels like families are dissolving, but I wonder if it's about perspective, and it's like the traditional family maybe is dissolving, but families look different, and like
they do.
You know, I would be the first to say, you know, as a single like divorced mom, like I would like to believe that the family unit that Jack and I are, you know, even though he's 12, that what we are and have established, and then the support system that we have is far healthier than maybe the previous, or like how the traditional family was and whatnot. And so maybe it depends on the situation and how, and like what it is when it comes to like personal happiness. It's like, is it out of selfishness or is it out of self-protection?
Right.
Which is so important too.
And there's so many different ways to, I mean, like stories, like you were saying, everybody has a story.
Yes.
And everyone's story is different. So, I mean, I don't know. It's funny. I grew up in a family that it felt so healthy. I was so loved. And so it's really hard for me because I think that's disappearing. But some other people may go, yes, you know, it needed to change, you know, and
that's where I'm at. And when you clear out these relationships that you've held on to because you were supposed to or whatever, then you have room to bring in people that align with your values, that cherish and treat your children the way you cherish and treat them. Like, especially with me, I don't have, like, I have a brother and sister, but they're on opposite ends of the country.
Sure.
My mom too. And between my husband and I, we have a mom and a dad.
Yeah.
So my kids don't have, I had 8 grandparents and 5 great-grandparents when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I had so much family.
Yeah.
And some of them have passed and some of them have weeded themselves out.
Sure.
But I think now, like, I don't feel isolated. When you look on paper, like, I don't have this big family, but I feel more connected to people, and I feel like my relationships are better and healthier than they were before the pandemic.
There's more depth to
There's
this.
so
It's
much-
like there's more
Yep.
quality, maybe.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. One thing, though, that I have to say, too, is that after the retreat, for some reason, it's like I went there going, okay, I'm going to reconnect with myself. And I left there going yin yang. And I go, huh? I couldn't quite figure out what the deal was with that, but I started looking up yin yang. I've always been drawn to circles and black and white. Weird.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it was like that became really important for me to understand better. So I started looking it up, and it's basically a philosophy, not a religion, right? The yin yang idea. And the whole idea is that you know the black and the white with the circle in both, and the whole idea was when it was created was that the flow is what made everything work, the flow. And so in order for anything to flow within a yin yang, there has to be a push from opposition. Now, I thought about that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the push from opposition is what we usually run from.
Yeah.
We don't like it when something's different or something is not what we think it should be, or that the values may be different or whatever. And we go, I don't like that. But in the yin yang idea, the push is what makes the flow. It makes it start turning. And there's a little bit of the other in each of us, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the value of that to me is huge. I started realizing that I created this idea. I put it on Facebook and different things. It was called the Secret Society of Broken People. And the idea was that sometimes you don't understand or know a broken person until you are one, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to see
Yes.
brokenness when you're broken.
Yeah.
But I also realized that I think a lot of that is fear-driven. People don't know how to handle brokenness if they're not broken.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah.
So
And
it's-
anyone who has experienced, like, I'm in some shit and
Yeah.
I'm feeling the weight of the shit,
Yes.
and the people they're close to start dropping off
Yes.
because they do not know how to deal with you.
Totally. And we had that. David and I had
Oh,
friends
yeah.
that didn't show up all of a sudden.
They don't know what to say.
Correct.
And they're uncomfortable.
Correct.
And what I really appreciated, like, I went through it when my mom was going through chemotherapy, and she's fine now. She came out of that.
Yeah.
But we lost her mom to cancer. And I so appreciated the people who just showed up and were there in it with me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even my best friends at the time did not know how to be there for me.
Correct.
They were not showing up. And it was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm removing myself.
Yes.
But, like, my now brother-in-law, he would come and sit with me and watch movies while I took care of my grandma.
Yeah.
I don't need to talk about the deep shit with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm living it, man. Just come be with me and let me not be in this for a sec.
Yes.
Do you give people a hall pass? Like, I always feel like in those situations, because I know that it's probably that person is uncomfortable,
Right.
or that person doesn't know what to say. Like, for me, I really don't ever hold that person accountable. I'm never like, well, so-and-so did not show up for me when I needed them. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what?
Maybe they couldn't.
They couldn't.
So when
It's
I
like-
when I went
yeah.
through it with grandma, I couldn't. I was so lonely and deep in my grief, and I made unhealthy decisions because I didn't know how to deal with it. Now, if something happened, I would be like, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand. Because now I've been through the shit and couldn't set foot in a funeral home for years after that. And it was like, I feel bad that I'm not going to this person's funeral, but, like, I can't do it today. And I wonder, too, if they looked and went, like, Jesse didn't show up, but I couldn't tell you who was at grandma's funeral.
Yeah.
I couldn't, you don't keep score like that.
Right.
And, I mean, when you're really, really hurt and you're not processing, like maybe you do, I did, but I don't anymore. Now they get a hall pass because I go, like, that's some heavy shit. I get it.
Where are you and Dave at? You know,
As far as that's concerned,
yes, yeah.
It's funny. It depends on the day, I think. And sometimes I still go back to that place of hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
But
grief is not a straight path.
grief is not, and everybody handles it differently, right? And,
Yes.
And for Dave, I think Dave still has a little bit more hurt around some of it than, you know, he's got cancer. He knows his days may be limited on the earth, and he's feeling all that. But for the most part, I think we've gone through it enough. It's getting healthier, and I feel like for the general, I guess the general idea is that most people are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And that's hard to say sometimes, you know?
I know. I find myself so much happier when I can say, you know what, I believe that that's the best they can do.
Yeah,
I
too.
believe that they're trying.
I do too. I just said something yesterday to somebody. I was like, don't you think that when we look at everything and we see what we do have, not what we don't have, what is working, not what isn't working, we're just happier people.
Yes.
But then I thought about the people that don't see it that way. Those are the people usually that help make change happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
That's
we're all
true.
needed.
We are.
We're all needed.
There's your yin yang again.
Yeah,
Yay.
exactly. I love the stories that you've talked about with your family, where you talked about like Toby pushed you to do the coaching and go down to Florida.
Yes,
and like,
yes.
it sounds like, I mean, not a lot of people have spouses that are supportive, and not everybody has kids and a support system,
Right.
you know, or and they have to seek that out through other means or other channels, you know. So I guess for listeners and viewers that are watching, how would you help to coach them if they do feel like, I mean, I kind of feel like I'm not on the right path, or I want to go down a particular path?
So again,
Yeah.
How would you coach someone that wants to find encouragement externally?
Yes.
A little, like where would you guide that person?
Purpose. So, you know, because for some people, maybe you don't see it in yourself. It seems like your family was like, Mom,
You're a genius. Go do this.
Go do this. You
I don't know about that, but
Yeah, or like, I feel like sometimes a person knows what maybe their
Sure.
passion is,
Sure.
or sometimes it's somebody else telling them, you should do this, you should do this, I'm just telling you, you should do it.
Yeah.
But how do they take that step? How do you encourage them through that process?
Usually, so my coaching model is something that came to me right after I became a coach. And I remember I figured out this little thing, and I remember Dave came home from work, and I'm like, Dave, I figured it out. You want to see it? He looks at me and he's like, do I have a choice? I go, no, sit down. And I had a chalkboard on the wall, and I started drawing it out. It's like I've stuck to that coaching model since then. And it's basically that we're given a gift, and our gift is a body, mind, and spirit, right? And that our body and our mind are very much connected to the earth. And when we die, our brain stops working, our body falls dead. But the spirit is actually the beautiful piece that connects us, human being, to trees, to animals, right? So whenever I coach anyone, I help them understand my coaching model first. And I always explain to them that the place that we're going to grow is the part where your core is, your heart. The place that is you without all the external earthly things holding you back. And that's where we always go. And so, like the other day, I was coaching somebody, and I'm like, did you catch that? You went to your head. Do you hear yourself in your head? And she's like, oh, yeah, I did. And so her homework was to catch that every time she went to her head. And so I think that's it, is that for me as a coach, that is so obvious. I can see it so easily, you know, with people. And so I guess that's my gift, is helping them understand that it's a choice, and that they can not be trapped by their body or their head, but to actually live through the flow in their spirit, which is that yin yang flow, and you know, all that. So I mean, it's funny, you think about it, our body, even if you fall and break a leg, all of a sudden it's really hard to maintain this spiritual place, because all of a sudden you're like, shit, my leg hurts.
My leg hurts, and it's all I can think about.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the same way with your head, you have things that are really important. Like if somebody is, I don't know, like let's say somebody is bullied as a child, all of a sudden you may build a box in your head saying, I was bullied as a child, I don't ever want it to happen again. And you spend your entire life looking and making sure out of the back, you know, around your corner of your shoulder, making sure no one's coming up to do it to you again. Yeah. instead of being fulfilled and not having that run your life.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to get caught in those things. Does that make sense?
It's like that's the lens that you put on, and then that's how you see things.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like, but the other is always there. Your core is always there, and it's connected to the, the good stuff, the juju, the mojo, the your God spot, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's hard to see because of all the crap that. Yeah.
And it takes training to listen to the right parts of your inner monologue, too.
Yeah.
I found this group called the Intenders of the Highest Good, and I was in my early 20s. Yeah. And it was the power of the law of attraction. But it was called the Intenders of the Highest Good.
Yeah.
That was before I'd heard of The Secret and all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, shit, you mean I can just imagine a parking spot up front? And I get one, and you would not believe how often I get the first parking spot.
Hilarious. I love it.
And it was little things like this, and it was like, you can do these experiments and you'll learn. If it is for the highest good, then it is for you.
Yeah.
But I had to train myself to, instead of going, oh God, I hope I don't see any deer on the way home, to going, I'm envisioning a safe trip home. And I'm not thinking about the things that could go wrong. I'm thinking about the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
Love it.
But I had to learn that. And it was like I had to snap a rubber band mentally when my brain did the thing. But people don't even know that's a skill to have, let alone that it's a thing they need to learn. They've never heard of it being a thing that they need to learn. So we're the light workers. We're telling people about this stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
I do.
So usually every episode, somebody picks a word, the one thing that they feel like kind of summarizes what they left at the door at this season of their life. What do you think that word would be for you?
I think, honestly, the word loss. I think that, like I said earlier, that if you look at what you do have and not what you don't have, things are much happier. And I think Dave and I have taken that and really use it. Dave will come up to me, like 2 days ago, there was a song playing, and I'm busy doing something, because we wives, we're busy doing stuff all the time. We have things to do.
We have a day full of many important things.
Right, and Dave comes up to me and just sort of taps me on the shoulder, and he just gives me this big grin, and he holds his hand out, and I take hold of it, and we go in the living room, and we dance that entire song.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's what it's all about, is taking the moments and realizing what you do have, not what's missing. And so, my word would be loss.
So if you just remove the loss, then you get to focus on the things you're gaining with
Correct.
every experience.
Correct.
Because would you have cherished that if his time wasn't limited?
Yeah.
Would you have been like, can't you see that I'm doing something?
Yeah, I had a moment where I thought that in my head.
Like, I'm not going to dance with
Yes.
you. Can you just pause it for a sec?
I am too busy right
Too
now.
busy. Right,
Yeah.
let me get back to you.
Yeah.
I think we all have moments like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Especially, like, I have small kids. You've got a son, and we all have moments where it's like, I can let this be magic, or I can keep on doing what I was doing in autopilot.
That's right, very much. Yeah, so I chose the dance, and it was wonderful. So, yeah.
I hope that inspires other people to choose the dance, too.
I really think it will.
hope
Robin, this
so.
has been a really great conversation.
Thank you.
This has been like a great coaching session.
Absolutely. I feel coached.
I know, I do too. A lot of
Coached out of me.
a lot of takeaways for sure. Well, if you want to know more information about Robin, we're going to put all of our stuff on social media.
Okay.
And that way then they can find out about Mr. Pissy.
Okay.
And links to the podcast, which I think we firmly believe you have to re-resurrect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does.
Yes.
It does.
We
Every
need the
now and
counselor
yeah.
and the coach.
I know. I do miss it. So this is
Yeah.
making me miss it even more. So,
Right?
Yeah.
Right? See, this is
Here's
it's just the
another
shot to
sign.
the arm. It's
I know it.
Yeah,
I
I love
know
it.
it.
Thanks
Yeah.
for being on, Robin.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed me and Mr.
And
Pissy.
Mr. Pissy.
Yeah, he enjoyed it too.
Oh, he looks so happy.
Doesn't he?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, all this information will be on Left at the Door, and you can connect with Robin and all of the things that her coaching and her visual coaching and learn more about her. And this has been another episode of
Left at the door.